right, thank you, Sydney, for those juicy stories and the world of entertainment. Now, we'll go ahead to look at something that I raised a couple of minutes back that's talking about the issue of sexual harassment in tertiary institution. I mean, the one that's been trending is the Randy professor in Obafemi Awolowo University, OAU. And of course, I made reference to a similar incident in a state university and how the matter eventually ended. But this is a trend in tertiary institution. It's so huge that you're just wondering, when will this ever come to an end? I have with me in the studio an educationist, one of the co-founders of Gorilla Brains Lecture. I'd like to thank very especially Paul Okumboa for joining me this morning. Paul, how are you doing?
Fine, thank you very much, Mr. Son.
Okay, well, this issue is as old as the university system itself, but it looks like it's getting bigger as a problem as the university system gets bigger as an institution, so to speak. Where is the problem coming from, in your opinion?
In my opinion, if I'm to talk from experience, sexual harassment in Nigeria's tertiary institution, or indeed perhaps any other country's tertiary institution, is as old as time. It's become very systemic, and it's become part of a norm. It's been accepted over time. It's also a means of trade, barter. In the university, I remember when I was in University of Benin, then we often say you can pass exam either you read, or you use your brain, or you pass with kind, cash, kind, and brains. So the kind is freely was I giving, freely will I give. And as funny as it might sound, it has also become really a means of exchange. People get certificates on their backs in our university. People get good grades on their backs in our university system. And because a professor this time has been publicly embarrassed, and it doesn't really exculpate the students themselves.
Okay.
I've had to talk with a professor friend of mine who's like a father to me. Although fully repented now, it gave me his experience one time.
What do you mean fully repented? Like he used to do stuff like this, but now
yes,
he's not born again.
While I'm not going to mention events,
yeah.
He wasn't a real known lecturer. You know, he was this shy type. But he told me one time that there was a girl who came to his office as a student to make one or two complaints or solutions, whatever the case is. And he observed that the body physiognomy of the lady within the very thin gown that she had worn was a bit too lucid. And the troubling nature of her body gave him a clear picture that this girl was not wearing pants or even anything tight under. And upon his, lo and behold, he said the girl seduced him, and he found that there was no pants under her gown.
So that was our mission.
Yeah, that was clearly our mission. So in a university system where you have young persons, especially girls from different backgrounds, you have psychological, whatever backgrounds they come from.
Yeah.
Some of them must have learned from their homes or their streets, the means of survival. For them, this might just be survival of the fittest. So if you get into the university through back door, this is what you get as fallout. Okay. You get more of this sort of patronage because, man, they must have to pass, report back to streets that they go for NYC, regardless of how they pass, it becomes a non-issue. So it's a systemic issue that has been sort of instituted in our tertiary institutions, and it's not emanating from the misbehavior or misdemeanors of lecturers or teachers, as the case were only. It's also students, culture, and people related.
Okay, let's situate this properly. The issue of sexual harassment in tertiary institution, the teachers themselves have a role to play. The students themselves have a role to play. The university authority. But for what you said, the example that you gave, this is where the students themselves go out for this thing because they see it as a means to
Mr. Seneca,
yes.
Something just came to my mind. What happened some time ago in University of Benin? A panel was set up, and they came up with, I think under the ethics committee, they came up with dress codes that should be allowed into the university. And then University of Benin printed what should be ascribed as what you should look like when you're coming to this school. So through the back gates and through also the gate, you either get sent back if you're not dressed in this order. Some elites in that university fought that. Because it was seeming as though this was like their bush allowance. I mean, you get to see these young girls looking so, skimpy in their lingerie. It tilts your loins and make you feel young and new again. That system itself was fault. Because I have a friend in that committee who was a lecturer who had this talk with me and told me, can you imagine some people are rising against this dress code committee? And I remember at the initial inception, the security department tried to actually enforce. I mean,
and they were enforcing it.
A girl was sent back in my presence at the University of Benin main gate, and she was asked to go back home to go and dress up. That's at the initial inception. No, I think if such committee had probably tried, would
have bring some sort of discipline.
Seeing itself is part of life, it's perception. When you don't see this sort of very evasive, mind-evasive body physiognomy, you might not get to be, to be skewed to that direction of wanting to, coquettishly patronize the students, or the students begin to coquettishly patronize you. I mean, I've seen video clips on social media sometimes where a lady tries to woo the attention of a rich guy who comes around her by trying to adjust her brow or dress or blow her hair one on that. It shows that if you put them in a dress condition and they live and abide by that dress condition, as much as it will not stop sexual advances, it will abate it fairly. So the university system has a very strong role to play in cultivating interest that will over time surmount this sort of social menace. If you are strong and you're punitive and you are regulatory in functions and you have a social department where people can freely walk up to and make reportage without being victimized. Because in some cases you find out that the students themselves are actually those who are actually victimized. I mean, we have to dichotomize here. There are some who just walk up to the lecturer and try to get their way by their bargaining power. While there are some who are sexually victimized.
But I think the real core of this whole issue is about those who are victimized. I mean, look at this OAU issue that has been trending. This is about victimization.
When I listen to that audio clip between the conversation between the professor and the girl, what I can simply say in truth, in all sense of truth and facts within my rationally thinking mind, is that that girl set out to embarrass the professor. You see, if you listen to the video, to the clip, you see when she mentioned his name deliberately, and the man reproved her for mentioning his name. The communications between the girl and this man was a camaraderie that suggested that there was either a consummation prior to this time, and perhaps the man was asking for a new negotiation that was similar. I mean, the guy said he was going to knock 5 times. So perhaps the girl was like, this time angry. Perhaps maybe there was an initial deal that wasn't fulfilled.
But it establishes the fact that someone is being victimized.
It doesn't completely say
that the
girl is the victim. The professor too can be the victim here. Perhaps, of course, he's human.
But if you're saying that from the conversation, it perhaps suggests that maybe somewhere along the line, a similar incident had taken place before where the professor didn't fulfill his own part of the bargain. And now the lady sees this as an opportunity to take her pound of flesh, to get back, to get a revenge on the professor. That's exactly what I'm talking about.
But in this scenario, what we're looking at here, in true essence, is sexual victimization within tertiary institution. That particular incident doesn't in any way give us any clue as to who could be the victim of the villain here. Because the suggestion, I cannot walk up to you and bargain, let's say, go kill somebody with you. It has to begin with who you are as a person. I must have respect for you as this man is either a pastor or a pious person, or he lives morally. So you must have given some inclinations that perhaps given the impression that you could be patronized.
So are you saying the OAU incident is not true?
I'm not debunking the reality of the incident. I'm saying that the victim and the villain equation here, we can't come to the truth to say this is the victim, this is the villain. The professor might just be the victim here. While the girl perhaps will just be the villain. Either case, this has to be subjected to rational and proper and evaluative investigation.
But is this healthy for our tertiary institution? Because I mean, this is something that is rampant, but we'll get to hear of it when the ladies, not just that the story comes out, the ladies involved, they are bold enough to bring this to the public domain. There are so many untold, there are so many unheard, there are so many that just goes under the carpet and nobody talks about that. So what do you make of this?
In my time in University of Benin, I remember a case of a girl whom I was friends with. She had to buy jump from change department to another faculty. According to her, the onslaught was becoming so much and so embarrassing that she fears this could culminate to rape, or this could culminate to her giving in one way or another. So she had to avoid this. Now, if you look at the scale of this issue, wherein both the lecturers and the students themselves are guilty. I mean, we have to come to that reality that the girls too must have patronized the lecturers, while the lecturers too must have also patronized the students. That behooves on the university system to come up with a check and balance scenario where students feel free to report real factual cases without being victimized, where lecturers too also report real factual cases without seeming as though he wants to take advantage of a situation. Now, I think when there is a system of checks, when there's a constant watch over, everybody naturally will tame his
everybody will sit up.
Yes, everybody will tame his or SSs. I mean, if a student knows that a university system has a, let's say, a whistleblowing policy, that if you have facts on a lecturer, not only would you graduate, I mean, the university can say, we can decide to graduate you. I mean, it's your cup of kunu. Graduate. We will also give you startup grants. Just give us facts. I mean, that will scare the lecturers themselves who have such tendencies to the holes.
Okay. Now, there's a dimension to it, which is that often the time when a lecturer gets involved in this kind of mess, other lecturers tend to have what you call solidarity with that lecturer. And so at the end of the day, the student becomes the victim.
Of course.
It becomes what I would call the comprehensive victim, because the lecturer that she's involved with is out to do what, I mean, he wants to do. And then the other colleague lecturers are out to protect one of their own. What do you make of this as a big challenge in dealing with this issue?
It's natural. I mean, if I come to your establishment, of course, there are people whom you have touched their lives, and of course, you are a real person before here. In attempt to report the evil that you have done, it might meet a brick wall, because these people will not take it. I mean, that's natural. So if, knowing that that's natural, I think the right thing to do is to have a policy program that tames everybody.
Okay.
If you don't have a policy program that tames everybody, then you find yourself in this equation of having to deal with who's saying the truth, who's not saying the truth, and how do we eradicate this thing from our system. Because where humans live, the tendency of this sort of thing happen. I mean, it happens in the house of God, the church itself, talk less of the tertiary institution where you are not morally obliged to tame them or to direct them or to caution them. Your job is first of all to lecture, teach. The rest you do is as a function of iroko parentis, which is stemming from perhaps conscience or religious consanguinity, where you feel like addressing other pertinent issues that affect the student. That's not your constituent duty. Okay,
our WhatsApp number is up and running, and just in case you want to share a thought or two with us on the focus of our discussion, sexual harassment in tertiary institution, using a case in point, the OAU incident, which is trending. The professor allegedly demanded for 5 rounds from a female student. And then, of course, there was an audio recording which has gone viral, and it's been trending in the social media. Well, there are different sides to it. We heard that the NUC has already set up an investigative panel on it, but the lady refused to come, refused to attend.
If I were the lady, I won't show up.
Okay.
I won't show up for fear of being further harassed or victimized. I mean, we have not gotten the system correct yet. So she, perhaps, if she's doing the good here, let's assume she's the victim here.
Yes.
She'll further be victimized if she owns up. No, it now behooves on the university system to either make submissions on the evidence before them and take probably some.
But there are cases where the university system, the university authority, took up such issues, and then of course the victim is not victimized. Rather, the lecturer is brought to justice. There are cases like that.
Mr. Dick, if you go to the Nigerian prison system, you find innocent persons there. Like I said, the only way you get to balance this scale of who's the victim or who's the villain is to have a policy program that tames everybody's excesses. Until then, you might either victimize the victim further. So it's in a way, like this recent saga at OAU. My suggestions would be a thorough X-ray. But if you listen to the tape, if you want to rely on the judgment of the tape, that audio tape alone, you cannot get the fact of who is the victim.
Okay, now, but isn't that a challenge, relying on maybe a videotape or a video recording? Don't you think one of the greatest challenge in this issue of harassment is the burden of proof?
Good.
Yes, that's a big challenge. Anyway, our WhatsApp number is up and running. If you send us a WhatsApp message on this issue, we'll just run through some of the comments and contributions that have come so far in the course of our conversation on sexual harassment in tertiary institution. And now, of course, you would expect this in our system because you find a lot of young girls who are in school. They really don't know what's happening in school. They don't care, but they're in the business of making money. Yeah. Today they're in Kaduna, tomorrow they're in Benin, next tomorrow they're in Lagos, in Port Harcourt, you know, in the business of making money off men. All right, but they come back and then don't have such money, and then of course they make high grades, whereas the guy who has been burning candles all through the night, I mean, is just there in the average range. Yeah,
this is equal to the norm. Like when you place competence on the altar of sentiment, you end up having a society run by miscreants.
So you're talking about like the admission policy or the admission system, how people get admission, get into this,
yeah. S-rail of getting into the university system itself is fraught to fraud. When you find, see, when we're dealing on something that borders on intellectual property, you cannot hide it. So when people get into the university system and cannot survive and begin to rely on money blocking or sexual blockings, there has been a fault in the process that brought them into the institution. I mean, we have an educational policy. Everybody must not attain the tertiary institution environment. But you can acquire knowledge via technicals, vocationals, and all of that, and still be a lettered person. But we have so much emphasis on the certification. And of course, this time people begin to go in with a do or die concept of whether I get in one way or another. When they get in, they must marshal out ways to be called graduates. I mean, it's become quite an issue in studies that we just rely on. Are you a graduate before you give the person an A? Or what grade did you leave school before you ascribe that person a chance to even prove his or her what? We no longer rely on the content of the certification. The certification itself is not taking preeminence over the content of the certification itself. So people will do anything virtually while they're in the school system to get the certification. And of course, good grades. That was one of the faults that I faulted jam policy of admission when they said they're going to use the grade system. If we're going to use the grade system, you're going to encourage malpractice and people do anything to get into school. And mind you, this doesn't just happen within the tertiary institution only. Before the tertiary institution, what were these kids? I mean, the girl who is a prostitute today was once a virgin. She was once so immaculate that if you talk to her on such issues, she's going to reply you with some measure of disdain. It must have taken some correlation of corrupt ingredients or circumstances that has brewed within her that she feels she cannot take care of except she used a natural giving workshop to take care of it. So one or another way, we were dealing with an issue that is systemic in terms of human and social orientation, upbringing as well, prior to the university, and the structure that gives these people admission to go prove their intellectual capacity within the university. So when they get into the tertiary institution, if they cannot prove, nobody wants to go home ridiculed. Nobody wants to go back to their street like, oh, they shot this person out of College of Medicine, person could not survive University of Benin. So you find people desperately trying to get that certification at all costs, all thanks to the structure and system that we uphold as a society.
Okay, so if we get those structures and system right, probably will reduce this menace of sexual harassment.
Some years ago, when University of Benin when post-training was introduced, 14, 15-year-old persons passed that exam and they go into the university. Before you corrupt a 14-year-old or a 15-year-old person who got into the university via merit, it's going to be difficult. Before the lecturer begins to say, you come to my office, it's going to be the lecturer who have to think, because that child is capable of passing that exam without help. So it's because maybe the lecturer has seen the script or the grades and this person is performing poorly. Of course, let's not remove the fact that these are humans too. Unless they begin to find issues running in their mind. If I make advances of this up, maybe this person will cave in because the person will have to pass. But when you know that you have, let's say, 40 persons in your department and you're the lecturer of certain course and you've taken continuous assessment, you've taken class attendance, you found out that these kids don't go nowhere but classrooms, and you find out that when you write tests or you do practicals, these kids are proving themselves. You'll be afraid to even mention it to them. Is there anything we can do? Because they naturally will pass that exam. Now, even if everybody don't pass that exam, let's assume of 40 persons, let's say 10 don't do well, 5 don't do well, still doesn't even give you the moral impetus to want to begin to incubate or nurse the idea of trying to circumvent the order of passing exam, because you know there is an overwhelming scale of intellectual output. So you should, naturally that would drive caution. This person, maybe the person wasn't so less busy this time or something came up.
We got a couple of messages on our WhatsApp platform. This one says, I'm of the view that this issue is quite complex and should be taken seriously. It is so complex that the prof and the student may even have had a consensual relationship. The question is it proper for a lecturer to have a relationship with a student? That's a good question. It says, I am in the system and I know for sure that there are even lecturers that end up marrying their students. Thank you for that contribution. I think ITV should categorize these issues and discuss with stakeholders on possible ways to curb same. This is Momodu Orene Hogi. Ogenega Hogi. Abi? Yeah, I hope I got that right. Ogenega Hogi. Thank you for the contribution, which again has brought some more insight into the conversation. I'm sure that subsequently we'll definitely look at it and then get more stakeholders to ventilate their views on it. Thank you, Mamadou, for those useful insights that you brought to bear. I want to thank you, Paul, for finding time to be with me on this issue. But it's an ongoing issue, which means it's something we'll look at again. When we return, we'll look at the security situation, particularly against the background of the gun control policy instituted by the IGP just to curb crime and criminality. Barrister Leonard Osa-Owage will be joining us online via telephone, and then of course Barrister Osazuwa Omonowa is already in the studio. But we have, my name is Oshakbeme Festus. Like Paul Okungbowa rightly said, there should be a proper policy in the educational system to checkmate any form of indiscipline. Thank you, Festus, for your contribution. Okay, we'll take a short break and then we'll be back with the rest of our conversation on TMI Monday with yours sincerely. Don't go away. Remember, the countdown to the 2018 World Cup is on, or hitting you with that jingle right now, right away. You can take advantage of the countdown to advertise your goods and services, your businesses, and you will be glad for doing just that. And every Wednesday, you get all the excitement heralding the World Cup on a World Cup Countdown live show with Comrade Emerson, Wednesday 3 to 4 p.m. Stay tuned. We'll be back with you.